Joel and I met when we were both young and still in school. It was just an ordinary day when our paths crossed, but something about his presence immediately caught my attention. Joel had this magnetic personality that ensured he was always surrounded by people. He was charming, handsome, and incredibly thoughtful. I could hardly believe he would notice me, but when he did, it was the beginning of something I could never have imagined. We started talking, and our conversations flowed as if we'd known each other our whole lives. Joel had a way of making me feel like the most important person in the world. Before long, we realized we were enrolled in the same program. It felt like destiny, and we quickly became inseparable. The first few years were simple but beautiful. We tackled our studies together, helped each other with assignments, and motivated each other before exams. Joel was incredibly talented and grasped things quickly. I admired him for that. He was my rock, always ready with answers to my questions and solutions to my problems. We became a team, and it felt like we could take on anything. We lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment that barely fit the two of us, but it didn't matter. It was our home. Our furniture was a mix of hand-me-downs and secondhand finds, but we were proud of what we had. Money was always tight, and sometimes I wondered how we even managed to pay the rent. Yet somehow, we always made it work. When I got my first job offer, it was a big deal. Balancing a full course load with a part-time job, however, turned out to be harder than I had expected. My grades began to slip, and I struggled to keep up with my classes. Joel, always my biggest supporter, reassured me that the most important thing was to get through it. "Grades don't matter as long as you graduate," he'd say. I clung to those words and kept pushing forward, but something felt off. No matter how hard I worked or how carefully I budgeted, the money always seemed to disappear faster than I expected. I spent sleepless nights going over our finances, trying to figure out where it was all going. When I brought it up with Joel, he just shrugged and said he was as baffled as I was. Years passed, and we made it through school. Me barely. Joel with top grades. Occasionally, he'd teasingly remind me of this with a sparkle in his eye. "You know I'm kind of a genius, right?" he'd say. And I'd always reply by reminding him that I was working alongside my studies. He'd laugh, give me a hug, and say, "You're amazing, darling." When I got offered my dream job, I thought Joel would be happy for me. Instead, it became one of our biggest conflicts. He wanted me to drop out of school to focus on the job, while I felt it was important to finish what I'd started. After many late-night discussions, we reached a compromise. I'd start the job and study part-time. It would take longer to graduate, but we could move into a bigger apartment and have better finances. The job quickly became a significant part of my life. I loved every second of it. I felt appreciated and discovered I had a talent for what I was doing. The hours flew by, and sometimes I didn't even notice how much time I spent at work. Joel, however, struggled to find a job after graduating. I watched as he faced rejection after rejection, and each one seemed to wear him down. He became bitter, and we slowly drifted apart. At home, things changed. Joel started having outbursts. He'd yell at me over small things and accuse me of thinking I was better than him. He claimed I thought he was lazy, though I reassured him I didn't, even though a part of me knew there was some truth to it. He spent his days on the couch, did nothing to help, and used my salary to buy things we didn't need. I said nothing. I told myself it was hard for him being unemployed, and I didn't want to make things worse. One day, I told Joel I had a business trip and would be gone for a week. He barely acknowledged it. When I returned home earlier than planned, hoping to surprise him, it was I who got the surprise. As I opened the door, I heard voices coming from the bedroom. A familiar female voice said, "When are you going to leave her? I want you all to myself." Joel replied, "Soon. I just need to save up a bit more." The woman giggled and asked, "She still hasn't noticed anything?" Joel laughed, "No, not after all these years." I froze. Two massive revelations at once. Quietly, I backed out of the apartment and checked into a hotel. I spent the whole night staring at the walls, thinking about what to do. The next day, I emptied our joint accounts and transferred the money into my own. While reviewing the transactions, I realized small amounts had been disappearing regularly for years. Altogether, it was a significant sum. I contacted a lawyer and started planning my next steps. That evening, I went home. Joel's mistress was still there. As I walked into the bedroom, I was met with the sight of them together, Joel and his stepsister, Sarah. I'd always thought their relationship was a bit too close, but I'd never imagined this. Joel tried to explain, but I cut him off. "We'll handle this through lawyers," I said, and then I turned around and left. It didn't take long to find a new apartment. I bought new furniture and started over. Joel kept everything we'd shared. His savings went toward legal fees and rent, and before long, he couldn't afford to stay. The irony was that he finally managed to get a job after all of this. He tried to contact me several times, first to ask me to come back, then to blame me for everything, and finally to complain about how hard his life had become. Eventually, I blocked his number. There was nothing left to say. In hindsight, I realized I'd stopped loving Joel long before everything fell apart. His outbursts and bitterness had already destroyed what we had. Now I'm living a new life, stronger and happier than ever. What Joel and Sarah do no longer matters to me. I've moved on, and that's all that matters. 4-0.
If you liked this story, please subscribe and give us a thumbs up. It helps a lot, and you won't miss out on any future stories. Take care and live your best life.